On where you're located. And my first question that I always have to ask is, can I be heard? Those of you who are on the live chat, if you could just let me know whether or not you can hear me. And my first question that I always have to ask is, can I be heard? Those of you who are on the live chat. I apologize. There was a bit of a delay in what I've got going live right now. I should have realized what I was up to. So bear with me for just 1 second while I go ahead and see if I can get your chats live for me here real quick. This, as always, continues to be a bit of a work in progress. But there you are, a little echoey. Yeah, the reason it was echoey is because there was stuff coming out of my speakers. I was stupid enough to have it coming out of here instead of having it muted for me here. So I hope everybody is doing well today, and thank you very much for tuning in. I know that you have all kinds of people to watch SpaceX launches on, and it's not something I intend to do on a really regular basis unless it's a very, very big event. Perhaps the relaunch of SN15, that's something that I would be very interested in doing. The first reuse of Starship is something that I'm going to be interested in. And of course, the first stacked launch, well, I'm going to be in South Padre Island for that particular launch. So regardless of how that ends up going. So bear with me just a moment here. I'm checking on everything. The launch is taking place. A 15 launch, they have a crane on it still. So, you know, they're obviously still doing work on it, and they haven't officially given it a go yet either. So, you know, who knows what sort of stresses the stainless steel structure underwent during flight, during max Q, during landing, etc. So, you know, it could be that they may decide that SN15 is not flight worthy, but it certainly appears that they're going to go forward with this launch. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening, but it's still there and it still has a crane on it. So it does appear that they, you know, want to take a shot at it. But we shall definitely see. Am I going to make a video of Bezos getting 10 billion for the lunar lander? You know, that's interesting. I actually did talk a little bit about that. But yeah, with the new law being passed, I am hoping, what I am hoping is that because of what has happened with ULA and BE4, NASA is going to realize that Blue Origin cannot be counted on to deliver an effective propulsion system, that they are just not going to be able to do that for a lunar lander, and it is going to require a new propulsion system, one they've been working on for 3 years, but 3 years is like 3 months to any other company. So I hope that they've lost any sort of any sort of positive feelings that they have at NASA, and they're not going to be the ones who get the award, but it's going to be somebody else. So we'll see how much that works. The crane's been disconnected. That's good to hear. I just was looking at a live shot of it. There was still a crane there. But at the same time, maybe that wasn't a live shot. I don't know. I don't watch Boca Chica nonstop. I spend most of my time researching just about everything from the length and breadth of space science and space flight. So this is not something that I necessarily stick with. So yeah, it is my sincere hope that NASA, you know, if this law is passed and they have to have a second provider, that they have a little bit of sense and realize that the national ripoff team is the worst solution that they could go with. And, you know, Dynetics set themselves apart by requesting a contract for the next deal coming up, perhaps looking for a solution there, whereas Blue Origin, all they were doing was suing. So maybe they've, you know, made some enemies at NASA. Maybe NASA would go with somebody else. All I can do is hope. Anyway, fingers crossed. We've just got a few more minutes until the launch.
So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that as well. The amendment will be stripped by the House. Yeah, it is quite possible. It's hard to say. It depends on how powerful the individuals are that have the amendment attached. This is an extremely important bill that's going through right now. And it could be that keeping that amendment attached is what gets the votes of the necessary senators to get it passed. So removing that amendment may not be much of a priority. We'll see how it all ends up in the wash, but there's clearly a lot of congressional pressure from a variety of different people to bring a second competitor into the deal. The only thing that concerns me about it, of course, is that Blue Origin looks like the second competitor, which would be a massive mistake, a huge mistake. By the way, looks like I've got 135 people watching right now. Do appreciate it. Please like, please subscribe. Also in the description, there are many different ways to support the channel through super chats, obviously, and other ways. Any of that goes to me visiting a variety of different launches. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be going to see the stack launch of Starship, but also I intend to go see a Virgin Orbit launch. There was only one channel that covered the Virgin Galactic launch live. Only one that live streamed it. I'm not going to say who, but there was one. And I want to be one of the channels covering the Virgin Orbit launch from the location, from the actual site where they launch. I think it'll be a pretty impressive thing because Cosmic Girl, the 747, thank you, Chris. Wow, way to jump in. Thank you so much for helping. The launch takes place at a lower altitude with Cosmic Girl than it does for Virgin Galactic and Spaceship Two. So I think it's going to be pretty damned impressive, actually, to see this launch, this Virgin Orbit launch in person. And I would very much like to be able to go to the deserts of California and witness this personally, because it looks like that Virgin doesn't enjoy live streaming these things in case there's a failure or something. I don't think they like to televise live failures, and I have to admit, I don't blame them. Elon doesn't seem to mind having explosions live on his live stream, but I think that Sir Richard may not like it very much. So we are just over 8 minutes away from launch, by the way, guys. We are close. This is a very big launch, and I'll tell you why. This may be the last launch of Starlink for a while. There are powerful elements at work right now trying to get the FAA, or the FCC rather, to stop any further Starlink launches until there is an environmental assessment of the impact of Starlink. Now, let me say that again. This could be the last Starlink launch for a while, depending on how the FCC rules. There is a lot of legal pressure being put on the FCC right now to stop the Starlink constellation because it represents a threat to the whole space junk problem, and they want it to be examined before further launches happen. And then we have OneWeb, which I'm going to be covering as well. OneWeb is happening tomorrow, being launched on a Soyuz. 32 of those satellites. OneWeb, of course, being the only real legitimate competitor for Starlink. So we need to keep that in mind. This is coming up tomorrow, and this will give, if Starlink is stopped by the FCC, this gives OneWeb a chance to catch up. They'll have over 200 satellites in orbit. Thank you, Nicholas. I really appreciate it. And back at you in Hungary. Hope to visit you there sometime. That would be wonderful. So yeah, SN15 will be back to the production site in about 20 minutes. We're only a few minutes away from launch, but production site about 20 minutes for 2 hours on a transporter, crane no longer attached. Thank you for the clarification, Chris. Like I said, I was just watching a live site. Timothy, thank you so much, Timothy, and thank you for watching from far away Australia at the ungodly hour that you must be watching. Oh my God. Thank you so much for tuning in. So we will see. We will see what the FCC does. The FCC wields a tremendous amount of power, and having worked in the telecommunications field for 19 years, I'll tell you, the FCC can make rulings that don't make any sense sometimes, that can be counterproductive. So you never can tell. You never can tell what the FCC is going to do, and just need to be ready for it. It is a serious threat. So once again, and I'm not, I may talk about this in a different live stream, but I think that there's a small point to be made there. Even though Starlink satellites themselves don't represent a threat, they have ion thrusters to get out of the way of space junk. They're very, they're not dangerous at all in themselves. But if something were to happen, then that was to be a big issue. So apparently I have an audio feedback. I have no idea why. There's nothing here that indicates that I should have an audio feedback. I'm sorry. I've got nothing happening here that should suggest that this is going to occur. All I can say is I'm sorry. In a few minutes, I'm going to be muted anyway as Falcon 9 takes to the skies with its 60 Starlink satellites. That will be an interesting thing indeed. So yeah, big stuff coming, very important. But yeah, the Starlink satellites don't represent a threat in themselves. However, there are pieces of space junk that are so small that we can't track them. If one of them were to strike one of the Starlink satellites and disable it, it would be a dead satellite and therefore a hazard. So that is something that does need to be looked at, because the space junk, threat does exist, and it's something that does need to be addressed. But at the same time, I don't think Starlink is making it significantly worse or anything. It's just something that needs to be addressed and quickly and aggressively, and it just isn't. Europe is being the most aggressive about this. So we're 3.5 minutes away. I read the distances are so big. There's like one Starlink satellite in the area of Montana. Let me give you an impression of what's going on here. There are over 9,000 airliners in flight, aircraft in flight around the world at any given minute, which is significantly more than the number of satellites we have. These airplanes don't crash into each other, but the reason they don't crash into each other is because of extensive air traffic control. Now, if you account for the amount of space junk that's up there, little bits and pieces of stuff that could still cause damage to a Starlink satellite, there are millions of bits up there. That's the danger, not Starlink itself, but a Starlink satellite getting hit by a smaller piece of space junk and then getting disabled by it or knocked off course. Then it becomes a hazard. And what we need to do is get rid of all these little bits of space junk, scoop them up. And there are a variety of different spacecraft that are being designed to do just that, but there isn't enough money. There isn't enough of a sense of urgency being created by it. And there is something called the Kessler syndrome, the Kessler effect, that would be truly disastrous to Starlink, to everything in orbit. If there were a chain reaction like we saw in Gravity. Gravity is not science fiction. That movie isn't. It is a possible scenario. And if a very large piece of equipment in orbit gets disintegrated, it could create a disastrous chain reaction. It's something we need to be concerned about. It's something that we need to avoid. Starlink itself is not the danger. The danger is the other stuff that could hit Starlink that we can't track, that's too small to track. Okay, we're less than 2 minutes from launch. Yes, you're right, Senor Slabhead. The Kessler syndrome is indeed real. I totally agree with that. And once again, this is not me saying there shouldn't be a Starlink. There absolutely should, but we need to get rid of all this dead garbage that's in orbit. There's so much of it out there, and it just gets worse and worse. The more satellites we put up there, the greater the chance that one of them is going to get hit by one of these dead pieces of junk and turned into a threat. And so we really need to do something on that. Yeah, China dropping faulty rockets, or China testing anti-sat weapons. Are you kidding me? All right, we are 1 minute away from launch, and I am going to go silent at this point so that you guys can watch Falcon 9 in all of its glory.
And in just a few seconds, the launch director should give the final go for launch.
Stage 2, pressing for flight.
Falcon 9, Starlink LDs go for launch.
You heard that call out for go for launch. All systems are go.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Let's listen in to the terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our Starlink satellites to orbit.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Stage 1, pressing for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1, propulsion is nominal.
What a beautiful day for a rocket launch here. As you can see, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying our stack of 60 Starlink satellites to orbit. Moments ago, we throttled the engines down in preparation for max Q, or the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the rocket will see.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Vehicle is supersonic, and we should be passing through max Q here in just a few seconds.
Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
We just passed through max Q, and in about a minute, we will have 3 events happening back to back, and that's main engine cutoff, or MECO, stage separation, and second engine start 1. So first, main engine cutoff. That is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines that you can see burning right now will shut off to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation. And this is where the first stage separates from the second stage.
Control has begun.
With the first stage making its way back to land on our drone ship, just read the instructions, while second stage continues on its journey to its third event, which is second engine startup 1. Now this is where the 1 MVAC engine on our second stage lights up and propels that second stage along with our Starlink satellites.
Sorry to be talking over them, but that is what I do on my live streams. I've got my own commentary here. SpaceX does a good job too, so if you prefer the way they talk, I understand it. And by all means, head on over to their stream. But man, I never get sick of this. Look at it go. Already through max Q. MECO getting close. Always having technical issues. Looking good. Looking good, guys. Beautiful. Main engine separation. Magnificent. I mean, it's like, you know, just so routine these days. SpaceX has just gotten so good at this. I mean, ULA and the Atlas V, they're just as good at this, but still, the landing part, the landing of the booster, that also is impressive. There's the Starlink satellites being deployed from the fairing, getting ready to go. Once again, the booster landing on a platform in the ocean simply because requires a lot more fuel to get the Starlinks into the correct position. So therefore, it requires the booster to use the vast majority of its fuel to get the payload into the proper position. And so it doesn't have enough fuel to return to Cape Canaveral. Instead, it lands on the ocean. So, and this is generally what happens most of the time. This is generally the scenario that we look at on a regular basis. It's just so perfect, and the landing part actually is my favorite thing about this. The booster coming down nice and smooth, and every now and then we have a failure, but it's really uncommon. It's really something that doesn't happen very often at all. Usually they are completely. So some debris falling off of stage 1, somebody says. I didn't see that, but maybe it could have been just a piece of ice, a piece of, something from the fuel. These, of course, everything's under super cool temperatures, so that could be the case. Yeah, you're right about that, Opus. The camera is very good. Very impressive. By the way, 344 people liking. Please like, please subscribe, and if you are so inclined, please support this channel. It isn't free for me to run these live streams. Not saying it costs a lot. It doesn't. I've got somebody helping me across the pond over in Britain to make this happen. Very talented person. So if there's any way I can get support, and I've received some very nice support lately, thank you so much for that. Or just a like and a subscribe, and I will be very happy either way. And I'm not going to say anything more about that right now. So anyway, yeah, it's looking good. That stage coming in and watching our beautiful home planet getting larger and larger in the field of view as Starlink prepares to deploy. It is fantastic indeed. The next Falcon Heavy launch was delayed until October. This is a military launch. Falcon Heavy has only flown 3 times. And they really, in my opinion, have underused Falcon Heavy, because there are many payloads that can be carried to geosynchronous orbit by an Atlas V that cannot be carried by a Falcon 9. Falcon 9s are incapable of carrying certain amounts of mass to certain altitudes. Falcon Heavy, on the other hand, can do it. So I don't know why they haven't used it more, but it will be carrying a military satellite up in October, is my understanding. There was a delay on the payload. I'm very excited about that Falcon Heavy launch, by the way, and I'm thinking about going to see it. I think that would be a fantastic thing. Second launch for this booster. Thank you very much. Falcon Heavy has a purpose anymore if Starship is getting closer to orbital flights. Yes, I do believe that it does, because we still have a ways to go with Starship. One thing to keep in mind is if they decide to go to orbit without even proper insulation on the fuel tanks, which currently they don't have. If you got that brief look of the interior of Starship, it was just stainless steel. That's all it was. There's no insulation. It needs that. Otherwise, it's going to lose that fuel through propellant boil off. So it needs to have that fuel at some point. So, it's going to be a while before Starship becomes a truly operational vessel. They may be able to get the thing to orbit, but it won't really be useful until a number of things are still done. So any orbital flight that occurs is probably going to just be a test flight to see what happens to the vehicle on reentry, but making it into a truly operational vessel is still a little ways away. So I think Falcon Heavy is still required. And as a matter of fact, it's the only SpaceX vehicle aside from Falcon 9 that's been certified by the military as being safe for their equipment. They looked past Starship. They disregarded it. So for 5 years, SpaceX actually has to use Falcon Heavy. They have no choice in order to deploy these military cargoes to geosynchronous transfer orbit. I think from memory, there are distant contracts that could use with Falcon Heavy or Starship. There is one, the one I'm the most excited about. It's the Psyche mission, the 61 Psyche mission to possibly the most valuable asteroid in the universe. Oh, it's set down. How did I miss that? Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, not quite in the center of the target, but good enough. Good enough. Let's just hope there's no rough seas. Good landing. Very good landing. Fantastic, guys. Absolutely fantastic. I'm curious if SpaceX is going to continue their broadcasting until we have it confirmed that they have the Starlink package delivered. They are maneuvering into position now. Looping footage. I didn't see that, but then again, I looked past the landing. But yeah, for 5 years, guys, they will have to use Falcon Heavy to deliver payloads to geosynchronous transfer orbits. And also they are required to come up with a larger fairing for Falcon Heavy as well, and they have to pay for it. The US military did not, they declined to pay for a larger fairing for Falcon Heavy. And so SpaceX actually sued over that. This was before the whole HLS thing. Elon sued and lost. And so as a result, the SpaceX is charging the military for each individual launch, little bits and pieces of the new fairing that they're going to have to develop for the Falcon Heavy that, in Elon's opinion, is going to be outdated in just a couple of years, but he's being forced to use. So that is indeed the problem. So yeah, who's Jeff? Yeah. Hello, Belgium. I have been to Belgium before. Some of the nicest people on the planet, let me tell you. I'm delighted with Belgium. Wonderful people. Thank you so much, Clint. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the 5 quid. Means a lot to me. And speaking of Britain, since obviously that's where you're from or where you currently live, I'm going to be covering a lot of British space flight because there's a lot of British space flight coming. 3 spaceports opening up in Britain, 1 in Scotland, 1 in Cornwall, and 1 in Wales. Very exciting stuff happening in the world of British space flight, and I intend to be covering it in Britain. So I am extremely excited about that, to say the least. As a lot of you probably know, I intend to relocate my channel to Cornwall to cover all of this developing UK space flight. That doesn't mean I'm not going to cover SpaceX. I'm going to take a flight back to Houston anytime there's something big happening in Boca Chica. I'll definitely cover all that. But there are so much exciting stuff happening in British space flight, and it needs to be covered. So yeah, it's when do I think Starship will become useful to where Falcon can be retired? Maybe 3 years. I would say about that time. It takes a while to get a rocket from where it is now, because I've seen Starship as it is now. And what it is it's a stainless steel rocket with just, basic avionics and, the ability to maneuver, of course, reaction control thrusters and Raptor engines. But it doesn't have a whole lot else. And there's a lot else that goes into an operational rocket. Now, they can get this thing to orbit, yeah, but can they deliver payloads? Can they, effectively, reliably to the correct orbits, that sort of thing? All of that still requires more work and more effort. It's still, and plus they need to stack the thing too, make sure that the stacked solution works, make sure that it's reliable, make sure that it's safe. There's going to be a lot of customers that aren't going to trust in it until it launches quite a number of times. So hey, Alan, yeah, I can't wait either. I've been to Britain 8 times in my life. I spent a great deal of my life actually in Britain, and this whole development of British space flight has me very excited. But at the same time, I'm going to be covering space flight the world over, and definitely SpaceX. That will still be a major focus of mine. And anytime something big is happening in Boca Chica, it doesn't cost much money to fly from Heathrow or Gatwick back to Houston, then grab a rental car. It really isn't that expensive. So I'm more than happy to make the flight back and to the States. And I know, of course, plenty of people here, so it's really not a big deal. So I'll be covering stuff here as well as the UK, and I'm very excited about that. Yes, wow, and all I did is a copy paste. It's Wilfred. I don't know what to make of that. All I did was a copy paste from their site. It's bizarre. Thank you so much, Jughead. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. So we still have Falcon 9 in flight, preparing to deploy Starlink, everything looking nominal. There's a big thank you for you there, Jughead. Thank you so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. All of it goes into my next travel arrangements, and most probably that's going to be to see the Tubular Bells, as it is called, mission, which is a famous album from Virgin Records history. The early 1970s, the first album that they released, I think the band was called Tubular Bells. Anyway, that's the name of this mission from Virgin Orbit, and they are going to be launching a number of military payloads on this rocket, including a Belgian military satellite, apparently. So multiple militaries involved in this Virgin Orbit launch from California. So very, very exciting. I have a hard time saying that, Mister. It's tough. SN20 is just going to be a big, big what if. We'll see when we see. I really don't know how anything is going to perform with that, because it's going to be the first time that Starship is going not just to a moderate altitude, but all the way to orbit, or suborbital space, or whatever you want to call it. It's still space. That's totally different than flying up to, a few kilometers and coming back down. That is a huge difference. And so, it's going to really put this thing to the test in a big way. Would I fly on Dear Moon? Yes, I would. I absolutely would fly on Dear Moon, but I am not a talented artist. I'm not a Pulitzer Prize winning author or anything. I think that only the very best of these folks are going to end up on that. How many Starlink missions Mr. Elon sent to space by now? And love you too, Sweden. I'm looking forward to paying a visit to your country, because there's going to be an ESA reusable launcher test in northern Sweden. I don't know why I'm forgetting the name of the little town up there, but I can't wait to go up to the north of Sweden to go see that. That should be super exciting. So in terms of how many satellites, to be honest, I've lost track. I know they have hundreds and hundreds up there. They really are pushing for huge coverage, monumental coverage. But this may, as I've said before, this may be the last Starlink flight for a while. It's hard to say. It's very hard to say. So we need to keep that in mind. But Pepe 2580, thank you very much for the super chat. I really do appreciate it. We've seen some vacuum Raptor tests, but nothing long duration. Yeah, that is an issue. And I know we've kind of asked, I don't know why. I was hoping that they were going to be testing the vacuum Raptors on SN15. That's one of the big changes I was hoping that was going to have. Sure, it's launching from sea level, but it's not like they don't work at sea level. Then we could have tested a full duration burn, taking it up to 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers. I was hoping that this was going to be a very big difference in terms of its test. But unfortunately, we haven't seen that. And you need vacuum Raptors in order to make this beast work. So that is another missing piece of the puzzle. And one of the reasons why I believe Starship is not going to orbit this year. There are simply too many missing boxes. I think Elon is pushing himself and his staff as hard as they can in order to get to orbit as rapidly as possible, which is why he set the dates that he has. I just don't think it's realistic for it to happen in 7 months. But as I have committed, if Starship gets to orbit and lands successfully, I will eat a portion of a Boeing hat if it happens this year. So we will see what happens. We'll see if Elon gets me to do that. So, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that, Pepe 2580. Karuna, right? Yeah, that's the name of the little town. Very, very far north in Sweden. But yeah, that's where they're going to be testing this this booster. It's actually the third version of this ESA booster, and if it works, then they're going to be going to a full-fledged reusable booster for what is called the Ariane Next, which I just did a video on. So so yeah, we'll see. Yeah, and that's a good point, Sonderax, and about the vacuum Raptors, and that's why I think that we've still got a long ways to go. That's why I think we still have a lot of effort to put into this ship before it's really going to be space worthy, because you need vacuum Raptor engines in order to make this successful. So yeah, the Peter Beck maneuver, yes, Peter Beck did indeed inspire that, but instead of eating his own company's hat, I'm going to eat something a lot more distasteful, which is a damn Boeing hat. That will give me indigestion probably for the next week. So anyway, oh, thank you so much. Really do appreciate that, Perpetual Nerd. That's very nice of you for the gas money. Really do appreciate that. So yeah, back to the Starlink issue. Oh, it's about to deploy maybe. Let's have a look at them. We may be getting close here. They're just giving us a couple little views. Really do appreciate everybody's support. A great big thank you coming in, by the way. Really do appreciate it. But yeah, still has not been deployed. Will be deployed soon, hopefully. Bear with me for just one moment. I'm checking in. Okay. We're looking at about another 20 minutes. So they faked me out. They showed the package, but not the deployment. So we're looking at another 20 minutes or so before this sucker goes. So in any event, please forgive me. I occasionally, I don't watch a ton of Starlink flights. I watch a few of them, but they become so routine that I tend to watch the SpaceX missions that are associated with other things. But yeah, look at those. They are really amazing. Definitely amazing. Yeah, secondary engine cutoff needs to happen, that sort of thing, another burn. So yeah, it's all coming. What makes me angriest about space at this point, it's Blue Origin. They've got me angrier than anybody. You'd think it was Boeing, but it isn't. Boeing is actually starting to turn around a little bit. They're making progress on the SLS. They're actually now ahead of schedule. It's possible that they're going to launch this thing this year, and it's going to orbit the moon. Unreal. So if they manage to pull that off, Boeing will have partially, a little bit, redeemed themselves. But Blue Origin, on the other hand, has held up the entire HLS process, and they've held it up for a garbage lander. I could understand it if they had a good lander and they were holding up the process and saying, we got cheated and this is a very good lander that we have and you should have competition. I would understand that. Instead, they've got a piece of junk and they're holding up the HLS process because of that. That, among so many other reasons, they've delayed the launch of the Vulcan Centaur. In my opinion, Vulcan Centaur will not launch this year because of BE4. There are many reports coming from inside of ULA saying that ULA staff and management are really pissed off at Blue Origin right now because of the problems with the BE4. I mean, come on, Jeff, you had one job. You had one job. Get this engine done on time and get it done right. The rest of your jobs didn't matter compared to this. An entire company and the US military depends on this, and you blew it. Yeah, that's got me pissed off, really pissed off. So SN16 would be scrapped to focus on SN20. It's possible, McLaren. I have thought about that. I have definitely thought about that. So they might do that. It all depends. I think that Elon wants to take a shot at reusability before he goes for SN20. So if SN15 cannot be reused, he may try SN16 to see if he can get a reusability shot out of the whole thing before he goes for SN20, which almost definitely will not be reused. He's not only interested in getting to orbit, he's also interested in reusing the ship. So he needs to try to do both. So I think he probably will launch SN16, but that's just a guess, just because of how much he talks about reusability. We will see how it ends up going. Tori Bruno saying that the BE4 was the right chance. Yeah, Tori's going to say that. Tori's definitely going to say that. And I don't blame him. If I were him, I would say that too, because what else are you going to say? You know, we blew it, and we're not going to be able to find another engine for years. So we're going to be stuck with this thing. I mean, there's nothing else he can say. He's got to say that we have every confidence in this. And yeah, it was the right decision until it really turns out to be a disaster, which honestly, I hope doesn't happen. I really hope that they somehow hammer out the details, even if they need to bring in outside help, an outside contractor, fix this stupid engine, and get Vulcan Centaur flying. Because I think that's a good rocket. I think it has a lot of good ideas in it. And if it's crippled and hobbled because of its garbage engines, that is a tragedy to spaceflight, in my opinion. That is a big tragedy. Do I think that ESA Arianespace will deliver their plans? Find all the demonstrations of the Ariane Next, just drawings. Yeah, Ariane Next is still in the very early stages of development. Linked in the description of my latest video is a write-up on Ariane Next and what they have in mind for it. There is quite a lot of detail built into that. One of the most exciting things is that they're targeting 35 million euros per launch for a very heavy launch rocket with a 7-meter fairing. That is impressive. Only 35 million euros for that is a very good price. And honestly, I don't think that Starship is going to be any cheaper, even though theoretically it can launch for a few $million. SpaceX is not going to charge a few $1 million, not after all the money they've invested in Starship. They'll never get their money back. And plus, they're going to be sending all these ships to Mars. How are you going to pay for that? So yeah, Starlink will pay for some of it, but any good business owner has multiple revenue streams. So Starship is going to be a revenue stream, and they're going to charge a lot more than a couple $1 million per flight. I would say that's going to be more in the range of at least 40 to 50 million, maybe even more, given the huge amount of cargo that they can take into orbit. And well, it looks like we have some camera issues. I do apologize for that. Once again, it's one of the things that happen when you're going transatlantic, etc. But it's how it is. So let's see here. We are about 14 minutes away from payload deployment. P4 may be the worst and possibly last decision at ULA. Yeah, I agree, Tiago. It was the worst decision that ULA ever made. But at the time, they probably didn't know it. And a lot of the tests of BE4 have looked very good, very impressive. Everything seems to have been coming off right. So it appeared that things were going good. But yeah, in retrospect, hindsight's always 20/20. But in retrospect, they should have gone with a known quantity. They should have gotten Aerojet Rocketdyne to design them a reusable engine. Aerojet Rocketdyne, after all, knows how to build reusable engines, and they could have done that for the Vulcan Centaur. And yeah, ULA made a mistake, probably based on a financial decision. And it was a decision that I think is going to put them in deep trouble. Oh, someone just saw it fly. Oh, that's fantastic. Somebody just saw this fly over I'm sorry, Skopje? I'm sorry, I'm probably going to mispronounce the heck out of that. But in any event, very cool. Very cool. Somebody got to see that. Webcam feeding across the Atlantic. Yeah, transatlantic, there's always going to be these issues, but there's nothing I can do about it, guys, until I actually live in Great Britain. Then it will be a lot easier for me to manage this. Any control of Starship engines and wings. Do you think the Starship is the limit of how good chemical rockets can be? Yeah, Max, I think it is. I think that Starship and Raptor will hit the absolute maximum of what chemical rockets are capable of. And I think that we need to be transitioning to nuclear thermal, nuclear electric, the saltwater nuclear rocket from Zubrin, something like that. I've talked about lots of different types of alternate propulsions on my channel. You can go back, I have lots of videos on that stuff. There are so many promising ways to get us from place to place in the solar system. We should be exploiting that. We should be going after that, and we just aren't, not fast enough anyway. Still no public evidence of a 100% powerful duration BE4 test, says Beastman. Yeah, you know, at one time, a couple of months ago, I would have said, well, you know, ULA wouldn't be showing all the confidence that they're showing now if there's problems with the BE4. They wouldn't be saying that this thing is launching this year. That's what I would have said. But now that evidence has come out in the press from inside sources at ULA saying that these problems still are there, and now that they've replaced a very important military mission with an Atlas V that cannot legally fly in 2023, there's a problem, guys. There's definitely a problem, and that ain't good. That ain't good. So it bothers me. It really does. Okay. So let's see here. What are your views on ion engines of the future? I do like ion engines associated with nuclear electric power, especially if we get fusion, then they're going to be amazing. But yeah, ion engines are definitely feasible if you have a lot of power behind them. Right now, the whole solar electric ion thing is way too small in terms of thrust. Not nearly enough thrust. A hell of a lot of ISP, but not enough thrust. So you need a lot more power, definitely a lot more power in order to make that up. Yeah, I'm all in favor of any kind of alternate forms of propulsion. I'm definitely in favor of it. Obviously, we have ion engines on the Starlink satellites. We're going to have ion engines on the Lunar Gateway. That's the power and propulsion element. The PPE is going to have a solar electric ion engine. So yeah, I definitely am I'm definitely a fan of that. So we are maybe 9 minutes or so away from payload deployment. Is what I'm checking on right now. So I'm thinking about 9 or 8 minutes to payload deployment. And of course, you see right now sitting smack dab, well, almost over Saudi Arabia, just about over Saudi Arabia right now. And again, it just shows how fast things orbit. And that is something I talked about when I was fortunate enough to be interviewed on Space News Pod with the Chinese rocket situation. Because orbits are so swift and we don't know exactly when an uncontrolled booster is going to hit the atmosphere, we don't know exactly where it's going to come down. So the prediction was it was going to hit the Pacific just west of South America. Instead, it hit the Indian Ocean. That's a pretty big mistake. So, you know, and it could have hit land instead, very easily could have hit land given that huge of a margin of error. And guess what, guys? Chances are when the Chinese launch another piece of that space station, we're going to be going through that whole drama all over again, just for fun. Here's a spin on nuclear versus chemical. Surely nuclear engines may be difficult to scale. Elon's vision is to have 1,000 Starships still work out. We shall see. I don't know. They're a lot of what they're scaling right now at BWXT is very promising on nuclear thermal. Micro nuclear reactors are the way of the future for small communities. So I think that scaling down nuclear reactors, not only does it provide power for the propulsion, it provides power for the spaceship. And that's going to be very important if you're providing life support for dozens of people. I mean, that is going to be a huge undertaking. We've never had to provide life support for more than 10 or 11 people. And that's when we had tons of people on the ISS for a short amount of time. Now we're going to be looking at providing life support for huge numbers of people on top of everything else you need on Starship. So nuclear power, I think, is going to be important for a variety of different reasons. So we definitely need to be keeping that in mind. Fairings fold open and then close again for second stage parachute. That's an interesting question, Jacob. I think the second stage would go too far into orbit to deploy the payload. A lot of what they're sending up is going to be going to geosynchronous transfer orbit. Maybe it could find a way to come back down, not too sure. But that second stage that's called Icarus is going to be super cheap anyway. It's going to include a 3D printable engine, carbon fiber plus plastic, in terms of, and so it's going to be really, really light, incredibly light, and inexpensive compared to the current stage 2 for Ariane 6. So losing it may not be that big of a deal, and also it's going to fly off quite some distance, way away from the space junk that's orbiting the planet. At least that would be the hope, is that they would set that up in order to either deorbit it or send it so far out into space that it's not going to be a threat. Get the point about usability. Does the data really matter with how quickly Starship is being iterated? They seem to have prioritized the orbital flight completely. Yeah, they have put a lot of priority to it. I think that Elon just wants to demonstrate that this ship can work and get it to orbit as rapidly as possible, whether or not it's really ready to be used for a practical purpose. He just wants to show, hey, guess what? This works. You know, we sent it into space, it came back down, it didn't burn up, and it made a soft landing on the ocean. Look at that. And so people will have a lot more, and people meaning customers will have a lot more confidence in it, is my hope. So we will see. We will see what ends up happening. Over 300 people watching. Please like, please subscribe. Really do appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you care to support me in any way, I would definitely appreciate it. It will go towards me to traveling to my next destination, which is going to be the Virgin Orbit flight. A lot of you have heard me say this before, so I apologize. But the next Virgin Orbit flight, called Tubular Bells, I'm going to be going to attend that because there was only one channel, one, that filmed the Virgin Galactic flight live, that did that live streaming. I want to live stream the Virgin Orbit flight, because it seems that Virgin doesn't like to live stream their flights. So that's what I'm hoping towards. But like I say, it's not your responsibility to take care of that. Just a like and a subscribe, and I would be very happy either way. So we got a little bit of problem there. I think it's because I moved. There we are. We're focusing again. Bear with me for just a moment. Payload deployment should be coming up very, very soon. Very soon. It's moving away. Yes, that is a good point, Pandemic. You are absolutely right. No, you are absolutely right, Pandemic. I agree. I agree. I'll rephrase that. The Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese people. I have said this a number of times in my videos, but I'll say it again. The Chinese government, not the Chinese people. I have nothing against the Chinese people, period. Nothing against them at all. They are a hardworking people, family-oriented people. I got no problem with them whatsoever. It's just the government that I have an issue with. Even taikonauts, I got no problem with them. NASA astronauts have said that taikonauts are perfectly great to work with. They're very agreeable people. So I got no problem with them either. So I've said that a number of times in my videos, but I'll say it one more time. I got no problem with the Chinese at all, no matter what country they live in. I just have a problem with the government of the People's Republic of China. All right, so there we go. So I am, yeah, you're right. They're not even communists. That's true. They were more of a communist country earlier, or socialist, I guess you could call it, and that didn't work for them very well. So now they're just authoritarian and capitalist, really. So yeah, and they do some pretty awful stuff, to say the least. Okay, let's see, what else do we have coming up? And once again, thanks for everybody. Why was the CCP excluded from the ISS? The reason that they were excluded is because they allegedly stole technology. Allegedly stole proprietary technology from the United States or from the European Union. I can't really make the distinction, but I know that NASA claims that technology was stolen by the Chinese government. So that's why they're banned from the ISS. Thank you, Klaus. I really do appreciate your support. Thank you. There's a big old thank you for you there. Do appreciate that. And yes, I will return to Boca Chica for the stacked Starship launch, at least for the first launch to space. I'll definitely be there for that, regardless of what risks there might be associated with it. No would-be space journalist like myself would miss something like that. I will definitely be there for the stacked launch to repeat, or rather to report on that. All right, let's see here. So back, let's see, we're getting close to payload deployment. I'm going to check on that real quick. Just checking real quick on the status of payload deployment. I am told it's going to be about 9 minutes or so. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm going to mess this up. Huita Nord. Oh, Zubrin's mini Starship ideas. I have a video about that, actually. If you want to go into my videos, you'll find Zubrin's mini Starship in there. I love it. I think his idea for a mini Starship is perfect, since the Starship is capable of carrying 100 tons up to low Earth orbit, or in his, what he wants is a kind of a lunar transfer orbit flight. Then it deploys a 100-ton mini Starship to make the journey to Mars. And since you don't really need any fuel except for landing and getting there, there's a lot less fuel required for the Delta V to get to Mars, as opposed to escaping from Earth's gravity. So you use Starship to get away from Earth, and then mini Starship to make the journey and to make the landing. I love the idea. It allows for swifter reuse of Starship. And not only that, there's tons of other advantages. Go to my mini Starship video. I've got at least one about it, and check that out, and I think you'll like it. It's also called Mars Direct 3.0. It used to be called Mars Direct 2.0, but a brilliant young fellow from Spain, he actually came up with an improved version of it, and that's what I have detailed in that video. So check that out. I love it. I think it's a great idea, and I really think that it should be pursued. And incidentally, this is not confirmed, but Elon supposedly told Zubrin that if it made sense, he would build it. So who knows? We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, by Miguel Guerrera. Correct. Just so you know, and I'm sorry, Huita, I apologize. Yeah, I made that video. I made a video about Mars Direct 3.0. As a matter of fact, my partner in Britain just threw the link on there. It's right there if you want to go check out Mini Starship in Mars Direct 3.0. It includes Zubrin's idea and Miguel Guerrera's idea, and I think that they're both brilliant ideas. So we are getting close to deployment time, I would think. We are looking maybe about 6 or 7 minutes. Second engine startup appears to have just happened. Yeah, by all means, check it out. There's some great stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed making that video. I enjoyed working in conjunction with Miguel on that whole thing. We had a lengthy conference call to discuss all of the details. He had one of his partners make custom animations for that video. It was one of my favorite videos I ever made, to be honest. And I can't even really say I made it. All I did was take some of the animations that he made and his ideas and put it all together. That's all I did, really. So just a really great idea. Love it. So definitely check it out. I made it a few months ago. Very exciting indeed. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Pandemic, and no hard feelings taken on either side. I'm glad about that. And yeah, I'm sorry if I ever even came across sounding like I was saying anything against the Chinese as a people, because that is not me at all, and never will be. There is not a race of people on this planet that I would ever have any degree of prejudice for. Zero. Governments, yes. Political ideals, yes. People, no, never. So anyway, okay. So we got 321 people still watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, and we are getting close to payload deployment. I am beyond excited, to say the least. Yeah, this is great stuff. Oh, getting ready for engine. I think we have engine relight right now. Secondary engine cutoff coming up, and deployment coming up. Exciting stuff. Let's watch this baby go. Even though it's routine at this point, even though we expect that this is going to work out perfectly, you never know. It's space. Space is hard. So I'm going to be here with you until this payload is properly deployed. So let's go for it. We'll go for it. Why have many smaller engines instead of bigger ones? Good question, Jacob. You know, it's to like to remake the F1, for example. I don't even know if anybody's around that would know how to remake the F1. And then again, the F1 did not actually have a good thrust to weight ratio. It is a colossal engine, gigantic. So even though it only took 5 F1s to hurl Saturn V into orbit, Starship has double the thrust, or almost double the thrust of Saturn V. And so thank you so much, Sergusi. Thank you so, if that's how I pronounce it, for the €5. But yeah, that's the problem, is you need good thrust to weight ratio, which is what the Raptor is. But lots of engines, 28 of them, that's a little worrying, to say the least. Okay, question on the super chat. Thank you, Angry Man and everyone in here. Ever heard of the mushrooms on Mars? Yes, I have. The paper I think is compelling. There are people who say it's been debunked. I don't believe that. I think that there is no scientific reason that fungus could not exist on Mars. So, you know, we need to be open-minded about this stuff. And this is not something that was put out by a bunch of crackpots. This was put out by exobiologists. So I think that there is reason to believe that this is possible. Not that it's probable, not that it's definitely there, but I think we need to be open-minded about the possibility. So, you know, I mean, the photographs appear to show something growing back after it's been crushed by the rover, you know, and so it's a tough one. Once again, I cannot claim to be an expert on exobiology, but I do know that the scientific community is far more inclined to shoot down any notion of life being on Mars than they are to speculate about life being there. One thing I know for certain, there are several types of life on Earth that could easily survive on Mars. If they can survive here, why haven't they survived there? If there was life there billions of years ago, then why are they not here now? And so, you know, it could be just a smaller number of them, but I still do believe that we are coming. So we have a lit engine. It is taking a little bit longer to deploy, which is interesting. Yes, Anton Petrov, I have actually seen that. And yeah, His explanation is definitely a debunking one, and it is well thought out. But I don't necessarily think that that he's right. Don't necessarily think he's wrong either. But I think that we need to be careful about dismissing things too swiftly. That's all I need to say about it. But yeah, I highly respect the guy. I highly respect him and the individuals that he quotes from. So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I would not say that that theory is debunked yet. I don't think so. There's no reason, as I said before, why fungus cannot exist on Mars. So we need to be open, and multicellular life can exist on Mars. It's entirely possible. We need to be open to the possibility. Yes, extremophiles, indeed, Michael, indeed. Extremophiles do exist here. As a matter of fact, there are types of extremophiles that it's been theorized came from Mars because they can endure huge amounts of radiation and vacuum and all that. That's strange from an evolutionary perspective. Why would they exist? Why? They wouldn't have to. You know, you wouldn't need it here. But what if they came from Mars? They would need to have all of those characteristics there. What if they came here on a meteorite? So that's the idea behind that. So it's all very exciting, and that's why humans need to go so that we can confirm this one way or the other. Okay, let's see here. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Oceanic. Really do appreciate it. I really, thanks. I really do appreciate that. I continue to be amazed that this channel has grown at the rate that it has. I don't know why. All I can say is that you guys are very generous, and I appreciate you guys watching what I do. I'm deeply touched. That's all I can say. I'd never imagined that this many people would like what I do. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we've got to be getting close here. Meteorites move between planets. Sure, James, absolutely. Great big meteor hits Mars at a high rate of speed. Mars only has 1/3 the gravity of Earth. Let's say there's extremophiles on Mars. A huge amount of material is ejected from Mars as a result of this colossal impact. That material travels around the solar system. Some of it gets sucked in by the Earth's gravity. And if it's a large enough meteorite, it survives the re-entry and impacts here. And then the bacteria spread. So, or viruses or whatever may be on the meteor. That's the theory, is that, you know, you have the impact on Mars where there's life and it makes its way here, and vice versa. And a lot of people believe that the idea is that throughout the solar system, life has been exchanged, organic matter has been exchanged between the planets, and there's life everywhere that has a common relative. You know, it may be bacterial, but still it's going to be similar to us. And we won't know that until we go to Mars and find out. Is it going to be very similar to what's here, or is it going to be something completely different that evolved totally independently from us? Hard to say, but it's going to be exciting to find out. And sadly, we're really not going to find out until we go there. This whole sample return thing is not going to prove a thing. If we find life there in those samples and it appears to be similar to what we have here, they're just going to say, oh, well, it got contaminated by bacteria from Earth. End of discussion. That's all they're going to say. So, you know, we need to go there. I feel like Patrick, thank you for the super chat. Toenail fungus can definitely survive on Mars. I know how you feel, man. Boy, that's tough to get rid of. But yeah, it could indeed survive on Mars. I would think so. Yeah, it would be a huge impact, but it is definitely possible. It's not only possible, it has happened. We have found several meteorites on Earth that came from Mars. Absolutely. This has already been discovered. Look it up. I'm not just making this stuff up. We have found several meteorites on Earth that came from Mars. So it's something that actually happens on a regular basis. And it seems impossible. Given how huge space is, it doesn't seem, you know, feasible, but it can happen, most definitely. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, sorry about that, Oceanic. Yeah, that's some gross stuff that was being talked about there. All right, we are waiting. We are waiting right now for this. Starlink will become a competitor to traditional communications technologies. I hope soon, but they're going to have to do some advertisement if they're going to get the attention of people, because the vast majority of people don't even know a damn thing about Starlink. So that's going to take a little time before people, become aware of it, before people, start to embrace it. This is interesting. We are almost an hour post-launch and no payload deployment yet. That's curious. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong necessarily, but it is kind of fascinating that we don't have a payload deployment yet. Could the biggest volcano on Mars have erupted and sent some mass to Earth? Jacob, that's unlikely. And the reason for that is, well, it could have happened, but the reason is the volcanoes on Mars are shield volcanoes, similar to the ones in Hawaii. Now, there can be sometimes these things called lava bombs that get shot out by shield volcanoes, so that could have happened. But usually shield volcanoes have these gentle outflows of lava that take place over a long period of time, not these massive explosions like Mount St. Helens. So, it's chances are Olympus Mons, even though it's a colossal volcano, and it would have been something to see it erupting, it wasn't really a super Mount St. Helens kind of explosion. There's no evidence of that. There's 5 calderas on the summit of Olympus Mons, 100 kilometers in diameter between all 5 of them, and as deep as the Grand Canyon. Unreal. I mean, can you imagine even looking at something like that from the summit, from the top of the caldera and looking down into that? Oh my God, so many amazing things on Mars. So many amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate that channel. Appreciate the coffee. I am a big coffee drinker, so that is very much appreciated. 367 people watching. More people have tuned in. Thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe. And I do appreciate you guys tuning in. A big thank you for channel coming up right now. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. It's because lower gravity, not enough compression of subsurface rock to hold back the pressure. That's a good question. I'm afraid I can't answer that one. I'm not much of a geologist. I mean, I know about the difference, what a shield volcano is, what Olympus Mons, most probably did in its history. Another thing that we've learned, though, recently that we thought was impossible is that Mars is still geologically active, that there's still magma moving around under there. And there's been very recent volcanic activity on that planet. We thought it was dead. We thought it had a dead core until 2018 when our probe landed. Why am I forgetting the name of it? I'm getting old, guys. Early onset Alzheimer's. But anyway, what is that probe? Anyway, they detected quite a number of earthquakes, most of them not particularly intense, but still more than enough evidence to indicate that there is a lot of geological activity still happening on the red planet, something that we really need to keep in mind for future colonization, because with geological activity comes earthquakes. With earthquakes come landslides. We have seen landslides happen on Mars, and they can be devastating, because if you have rocks coming down from the sides of the Valles Marineris and falling to a distance of 3 or 4 kilometers and impacting in 1/3 gravity, spewing debris over a huge area, because once again, just 1/3 gravity, that could be very dangerous to your colony or your little scientific station. So these are all things that we need to keep in mind. Mars is going to have not the dangers that everybody talks about. Radiation. Everybody says, oh, radiation is going to kill us all. Whatever. Radiation on the surface of Mars is no more dangerous than the radiation on the ISS. That's been confirmed by the Curiosity rover and all of the readings that it has taken. It's really not that bad. The things that are unique to Mars, the things that are uniquely Martian, the dust storms, the landslides that are in 1/3 gravity, those are the things that are going to kill us. Those are the things that we need to look out for, and those are the things that nobody's paying attention to. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so we're still getting data from the second stage, I am told, and that is good news. So right now, it appears that everything is still going good for the deployment. It may just be a deployment into a different orbit or something along those lines. So there's no reason to be concerned. Let me emphasize again, no reason to be concerned about Starlink deployment. Everything seems to be going fine. They just may be deploying it into a different location. I'll be with you just to make sure that I let you know. Wow, it's in the SpaceX stream, the actual deploy time. Okay, well, thank you. I do appreciate that. That being the case, Mr. Lee or Mr. Lay, what is the deploy time? If you just put that down there, that would be very helpful. Then we'll know for sure. Or if I could get a little help from the tech side, that would be until time, no time, but scale till time is expected. Okay, all right. Thanks very much. So in any event, like I say, I'm just used to these things happening very quickly on the Starlink. So it's a little bit longer than usual, but again, no need for concern. Of course, that's what I said about the Rocket Lab launch. So maybe I should be saying, oh, we should be terrified, and then everything will go fine. Hard to say. Okay, so long waits before Starlink deployment are unusual. Yeah. And this is once again the timeline is expected deployment, not definite deployment. But yeah, it's coming. It's definitely coming. And I'll be here with you just to make sure that this does get deployed successfully. Mars is dead. Mars in a Monty Python. Not quite dead. I'm getting better. Yeah. Yes, he will be dead. He's very ill. Yeah, that's definitely the way Mars is. We think that planet is dead, but it's very much alive, in my opinion. It's alive in a biological sense, and it's alive in a geological sense. It's alive in a meteorological sense. And if we think that it isn't, we are looking for disaster. If we think everything's dead on that planet and there's no danger of disease, we are fooling ourselves. If we think that the air is too thin there for it to be dangerous to us in a dust storm, we are fooling ourselves. The dust on Mars is electrostatically charged. It will adhere to almost any surface, including your visor, including the windows on your rover, for example, all kinds of equipment, and it can give off static discharges. And lightning, come on. Does that sound safe to you in a Martian dust storm? Not to me either. So getting caught in a Martian dust storm is nothing to laugh at, and it's something uniquely Martian and something that we need to respect until we fully understand it. Okay, let's see. I'm multiple Starship launches to create a larger rocket. Oh, I love that idea, Syra. Definitely use Starship to make a bigger ship in orbit. Unquestionably, I like that idea a great deal, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Oh, we got a little bit more engine burn. They just went to they briefly gave us a view of the satellites. Just this tiny little view. Can't be any worse than Australia. I take it you live in Australia. I want to go there. I understand there's areas that are incredibly hot and dry, but other areas that are incredibly hot and humid. I'm not a big fan of the hot and humid part. I like the hot and dry part. I love deserts. That is definitely a cool place to say the least. Last, the liquid oxygen tanker. Did they? Boy, I missed that. I guess I'm too busy talking. That's one of my big problems. Always has been. Okay, I was trying to think that we just need to launch a string that we could tie to the other end of Mars and communicate that. Hello? Giant effing spiders. Yeah, giant spiders on Mars. It takes me back to, what is it, Angry Red Planet. That movie, Angry Red Planet, that had giant Martian spiders. That was frightening to say the least. I honestly, to answer your question, I'm embarrassed to say, but I don't know the total. They've been putting so many of these stinking things up. I don't know. What I do know is that OneWeb will have a little over 200, which is a pathetically small number compared to how many Starlinks there are. But what I do know is that this may be the last Starlink launch for a while, depending on how the FCC rules. This launch was incredibly important for that reason. And what the FCC does in the next few days is going to be very important to Starlink. Is the FCC going to put this whole damn thing on hold because they're afraid of what the impact it may have on space junk? We will see. We will see. Deployment coming up. Prometheus is the god that multiplies itself. Here we go.
Here's a shot of
All
the
right, let's check
top of
this
the
out.
second stage camera looking up at the Starlink satellites.
Do we have secondary engine cutoff? Here we go. Are we going to go? Let's have a look.
So coming up, payload deployment.
Looks like we are very close to deployment. Let's go, Starlink. And into the blackness. Into the blackness. Very cool. And the
Starlink
difference in
deploy
temperature. The difference in temperature.
So that's confirmation of payload deployment. You saw the mechanism separating away, and now the Starlink satellites starting to make their way away from the second stage. Shortly, they will deploy their solar array. Wow, that's a beautiful shot of Earthrise in the background. But shortly, they will deploy their solar array, and then over the next few days and weeks, they'll start to distance themselves out.
Magnificent. That never gets old. That never gets old. And over time, depending on how long they keep the feed going, you're going to see as these satellites separate from one another. At least the last time I watched one of these, they'll start to separate and you'll start to see them as individual units, one after another. And it's just an exciting thing. At the same time, it's very dark. From what I can see there, as they've passed, they're about to go into the night side. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to see of that. Oh, they just cut the feed. So it appears that everything has been deployed successfully, guys. Everything has gone up successfully. So that is where we shall end. It has been my pleasure and my honor to have spoken to all of you today and to have been your commentator for this launch. I'll be back tomorrow as OneWeb attempts to respond to this launch today, sending up their own satellites on an ESA Soyuz. So until we get everything associated with this space junk problem that's threatening to hold up Starlink, until this problem is resolved once and for all and we can travel to space in safety, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.